Welcome to the webinar. This is infrared surveying of flat and low slope roofs. I'd like to introduce myself and my team members. I'm Greg Stockton, and I'm a technical director for RoofScanIR and a couple of other of the modules in United Infrared. With me on the phone, if you will introduce yourselves, is Ben Hickson, Rob Miller, and John Gutierrez.
Hello, this is Ben Hickson, and I'm Roofing Technical Director.
Hi, I'm Rob Miller, and I'm the Chief Contracting Officer for the United Infrared Group and RoofScanIR.
And I'm John Gutierrez, the Business Development Manager for RoofScanIR and Building Science Department.
Thank you very much. Now, the question becomes, if you are a roofing contractor, a roof consultant, or a roofing manufacturer, how can infrared thermography help you? So we're going to do a presentation today, and we're going to go through a couple of the testing methods. We're going to talk about infrared thermography in general, infrared thermography of roofs, different techniques, and importantly at the end, we're going to talk about what, as a contractor especially, what infrared can do to help you produce a product that's better and make more money. So without any further ado, we'll do our presentation. So here's a flat roof, and we want to know where the moisture is in the roof. So where is the moisture in this roof? You can't see it visually. Some of the times you can walk over a roof and you can feel it kind of soft, and that gives you a good indication, but there's nothing scientific about walking on top of a roof trying to find the moisture. So there's a couple of testing options that you have. One, destructive testing, and also non-destructive testing. So destructive testing, if you can put probes into the roof, and these probes will measure the resistance across the two pins and give you an indication of whether there's moisture in the roof. And the ultimate destructive testing method, which is to cut a core out of the roof. This is important when you're trying to figure out what kind of roof system it is, what's in the substrate, and two, how much moisture is in there. Obviously, you can't cut holes in every little small section of the roof, but it is absolute verification. Nothing non-destructive is going to be absolute verification, but as you'll see, you get pretty confident doing this. What's going on, and two, we use other technologies to help us with the verifications. So the three non-destructive methods are nuclear density gauges, which count the slowed neutrons, dielectric capacitance meters, which measure the difference in the dielectric constant, and infrared thermal cameras, which measure the differences in heat between wet and dry roofs. Now, first I want to spend just a minute to tell you how we use those other two types of meters other than infrared, because obviously we're an infrared company. So the way to do this is to build a grid on the roof in either a 20 by 20, 10 by 10, or 5 by 5 foot grid on the roof, and you use these measurement results to extrapolate where the moisture and the amount of moisture is in the roof. The problem with it is the sample is so tiny that it's only really good to tell whether the roof is shot completely or not when it's soaking wet. It doesn't really give you an indication of all the spots that are wet. So the capacitance meter, this one on the right bottom is the one that we use. It's called the RWS. It goes supposedly 4 inches down below the surface, 10 on mass and a whole bunch of things. And we have quite a bit of false positive readings. We have some negative readings. And we like to use the infrared, and this is our meter of choice if we're not doing any core cutting or pin testing. It's much more difficult to transport and use, and frankly to correlate the nuclear density gauges. We use them very infrequently, only when the other 2 meters absolutely cannot be used. Then you got the thermal infrared. Thermal infrared, what we're looking for are wet areas. We can see the whole roof section or surface at one time, and we're looking for the light areas which are warmer. So, not to beat it to death, but meter surveys only work to prove that the areas are so widespread wet that they're not going to be able to be repaired, and for that they're effective. If you put down a bunch of meter readings on a piece of paper and they all turn up or almost all turn up wet, and you've spread them out, modeled them across the roof pretty good, that's pretty much a done deal that the roof is shot. And also areas that the way we use it is that areas that don't gain solar and therefore don't lend themselves to infrared, we use them for that, and also as a cross verification tool. So of course, when you can use infrared, it's always the best because you're covering 100% of the roof and you can see all the water even if it's in tiny sections. So before I turn this over to Ben, I just want to go through a couple of slides once more showing the meters and give you an idea how exactly this thermal infrared works. Infrared is based on the pattern that you see with the infrared camera. As it turns out, the wet substrates have a higher mass, more thermal conductivity, and higher specific heat. So those areas, when the sun warms up those areas, it takes longer for it to warm up wet insulation than it does dry because it has more mass. But then at night, it takes longer to cool off. And during that window of uneven heat dissipation, we get on the roof, we can see the water inside based on the thermal patterns. So again, real quick, this is an infrared image from above, and here's one with an overlay of where the water actually turns out to be. And this is, if you laid a grid up on this roof, and it's a random grid that was put on here, you find that 0 places, and this roof had a couple of significant spots, but 0 places came up on the meter grid. So Ben, if you don't mind, take us through the way that we really do our work
Right. Part of what RoofScanIR imparts to our RoofScanIR members in our training is the differentiation of not only which systems are good to get infrared scan results, thermal patterns, but also which times of the year on a monthly basis and which time on the clock. In other words, before sundown to roughly 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. And like Greg cited a moment ago, it takes longer for wet insulation with its higher mass to heat up, but the solar gain is retained longer also in the wet insulation higher mass than it is in the ideal dry insulation and lower mass. And what we're looking at here is on the left we have our temperature parameter, and on the bottom we have the hours, and we have, as the wet insulation retains the solar gain temperature longer, we have a differentiation there between the blue arrow and the red arrow. Ideally, we'd like to have a 15 to 20 degree differentiation for really clear thermal patterns, and depending on the resolution of your camera and your experience, you can be successful with less differentiation. But this is a good graph, and it shows the physics of what we're able to determine even before we go on the roof, based on knowing the climatic conditions, time of the year, and the roof insulation, deck, and roofing material, membrane, other materials. One tool that we all use, and particularly those of us that travel quite a bit, are the government-provided solar insulation charts. And what that means is that they have already charted at different latitudes across the country the temperature variations based on the direction that the sun is shining down on the earth, hence the solar gain aspect. And you can see on the top chart that with the entire chart above 5 on the radiation gain, that it would be a good time to do a scan in Phoenix with the right insulation, right roofing system anytime during the calendar year. That's not the case on the lower chart for Fairbanks, Alaska, where you can see that Camel's Nose kisses over the red line there roughly March through June, and then it gets very difficult prior to March, very difficult after March in Fairbanks, Alaska. Greg and I had an interesting opportunity for Fairbanks. I believe it was, wasn't it, Greg, that we had to pass on infrared in December with an important client because we just didn't feel like with the system, with the time of the year and the insulation information, that it was going to be beneficial. In Wichita, you can see that we have roughly starting halfway between March and April, ideal scan condition all the way to between September and October for ideal conditions. Anytime that one of these insulation charts with the graph below 3, that's too problematic, and you need to educate your owner, client, or property manager, a roofing consultant, or roofing contractor, or insurance company, or attorney, client, that you're not going to be able to get the thermal pattern detection needed for really good infrared scan information.
Knowing when to go and when not to go is a very important component of what we bring to our customer, and that is if it's the wrong kind of roof, if it's the wrong time of year, if it's a problem in some manner, then obviously we need to let our client know that it's not doable. And this ASTM document is what we hold as the official document, if you will, of testing. Although this document is quite old, it hasn't been updated. It was updated recently, but it needs to be completely rewritten. It's a good document, but it does have some problems with the technology updates. So I'm going to spend just a minute and go over the 4 methods which are the ways that we accomplish roof moisture surveys. 1, under roof infrared, on roof infrared, elevated vantage point infrared, and aerial infrared. Now, with all of them, the same dynamics apply, that we need a dry surface, we need the right kind of roof, we need solar insulation, we need low winds. The conditions during the time of the survey are quite critical. We also need to make sure that the day that we do the survey, during the day, that we get a lot of solar insulation and we have good conditions during that night that we're working. And we can tell, we have ways of knowing, of course, when the conditions basically close out on us. And the chart, the time temperature chart that Ben was showing earlier, can change by many different factors. You know, you can have a cloud come over, or it can get real low clouds. High clouds are usually not a problem, but we know and teach these methods to all the people that are in RoofScanIR that go out and do this work. And all the different methods have an advantage and disadvantage, as I'll cover. When you're shooting up onto a roof, let's say you got a metal roof, standing seam roof, and the purlins are holding it up, and they run vinyl back fiberglass 2 or 3 inches or whatever, up to 6 or 8 inches I've seen, across the roof. When the sun hits let's say this is the east-facing wall, when the sun hits it, the heat energy tries to transfer through the insulation, and the places that are wet in the morning, the places that are wet are going to be cold because the heat hasn't had a chance to warm up that higher mass. And so we can delineate it that way. Some of these are 30 feet up in the air, so it's kind of hard to paint them, but at least we can note them and make reports. This is a same kind of roof, and that was a compact roof. This is a roof that has a drop ceiling in it, and it has fiberglass, and you have to poke your head up through. They're kind of logistically hard to do. With on-roof surveying, you have you're standing on the roof at roof level, 5 or 6 feet tall. The camera's at your eye, and you're looking across the roof to find places that are wet. The way that we do it is we mark those areas with paint in the manner that I'm showing here on the outer edges of them, so that they can be surgically removed and replaced. And we just use a standard marking paint that doesn't damage the roof, of course. And as you spray out the can, because it's at a higher pressure and it goes to a lower pressure, it gets cold, and that we take advantage of, and we paint the areas, and then we also make a number on it, so that the next morning you can see the numbers. And they last for some number of months, depends on a lot of factors. On-roof is by far the most popular method of roof moisture surveying, and it's the one that we spend the most time on training our guys on how to do this, because it can be tricky. I like this picture because it shows something that you don't often see, where this wall is wet, and if you look up here, you can see up here, you can see this is an air conditioner and there's water around it as well. But I thought it's an interesting picture. There's two things that I want to say about this picture. One is this is pretty much a shot roof. The other is, if you notice, you can see every fastener in the roof. You can tell whether the roof has been fastened correctly. We see this a lot. It is a roof that's been repaired, but the problem is that they just went around the edge of it and they didn't fix what was missing in the middle. But you can still, again, you can see these fasteners here. Elevated is when you're above the roof but not aerial. You're above the roof looking down on the roof. It makes some beautiful imagery, and because you can see you're close, so you get really good resolution, but yet you're far enough away to see what's going on a wider scale.
Greg, we did a elevated vantage point survey on a relatively new foam roof where another firm had done an on-roof survey and not detected anything, and by knowing when to do the scan and elevated vantage point, we were able to detect moisture that enabled an owner to collect from their insurance company because of hail damage and moisture intrusion.
Mm-hmm. The farther you can get away from the target of your survey by still which you're still maintaining enough thermal sensitivity and spatial resolution to discern what happens, the better off you are. The farther away with the biggest camera, that's good, but you just have to have enough resolution, thermal and spatial, to be able to discern those areas. You know, when you're doing these elevated surveys a lot of times too, it's hard to mark it, but you can put a guy out here and a laser and use what's called a reticle on the camera to mark, you know, with a laser beam down onto the surface, and then the guy can just follow the laser beam. And then you have aerial infrared, and it requires very high resolution thermal imagers, but it being away, farther away, you get the big picture, and I'll talk about what we use that for in just a minute. The idea is that you're looking straight down onto the roof, and you can see straight down perfect enough to be able to delineate those areas and mark them on an overlay between the photo and the infrared, and mark those up on a CAD drawing. So the idea is that you can now take the CAD and overlay it over the visual picture of the roof and the infrared picture of the roof. You notice this, whoever did the repairs originally on this roof did a marvelous job, because you can see all these light colored areas are where they did the repair work, and by and large, especially on this section here, those places are dry. So the owner squoze another 10 years out of this roof, and that's the idea there. We use the aerial infrared for inaccessible roofs, dangerous roofs, and we have in our training, we have a very funny photograph of a roof that had, you can look up and you can see daylight all over the place in a bunch of spots. Trending on roofs can be done because you can overlay everything directly. Giant roofs can be done in a matter of minutes. When we do construction defect and other lawsuits where we're called in as the expert witness, or either called in by the engineering companies or the appraisers or the insurance companies to delineate wet areas on the roof, we use both aerial and on-roof infrared. Roofs where there's no access granted, and also reconnaissance missions where we fly huge areas and pick out roofs that have a lot of problems. So this is a visual picture, and I want to bring up the infrared because this really shows like a 3D kind of view of what's going on with multiple layers. This roof's it's an EPDM that's got a fiberglass layer, and then it's got a built-up roof underneath it, and the built-up roof was patched here, you can see. And you also can see how these areas, these light areas, are wet now, where the roof underneath was patched, but you can also see some things going on there too, where they didn't remove the wet insulation before they put the roof covering down. And if you want to talk about that, that is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in the roofing industry, because if you cover a wet roof and someone has an infrared picture of before you covered it, and then they come by and take another one and see the after picture, then it shows that you didn't take out the water. So the best practice here, obviously, is to do a moisture survey, whether the manufacturer is calling for it in a no-dollar limit warranty or whatever, or not, if you want to expand on that.
Yes, certainly it's in the owner's best interest to know if there's concealed moisture in an existing roof prior to paying out money for a recover roof. All of the major roofing membrane manufacturers have shared with us that their recover roofing sales are exponentially greater than they were prior to 2007 in this economy. So with the owner desiring to avoid the expense of insulation going to the landfill, roofing membrane going to the landfill, we're seeing and we're going to see a lot more recover roof business, if you will. And the ethical thing to do, like Greg said, whether it's a warranty issue or not, is for a third-party independent infrared roof moisture survey to be performed that documents either good news that you don't have any concealed moisture, or if you have concealed moisture, is it in contiguous areas that make good sense for surgically removing, like Greg said, and dry infill insulation and then the recover roof, or is that moisture stippled or modeled to where the decision really is it's a ruined roof and needs to come off rather than have a recover roof applied over it.
So when you look at the big picture, if you're the advocate of the owner, and most of the time the owner is asking you to be his advocate, the best thing to do is to do a moisture survey, because if you just tear the whole roof off because you've got a couple of spots of wet, if you tear the whole roof off, not only have they got to meet the new building code, which is I think an R20, which is going to be longer fasteners and all sorts of other issues. Also, if you don't do a moisture survey and you cover up the water, it can come back to haunt both you as a contractor, the owner, and also the roofing manufacturer. So that,
Greg, one thing I really like is the way we teach in our RoofScanIR roofing training classes is depending on the type of the deck, the type of the roofing system insulation and roofing membrane assembly, we help our attendees learn the optimal times, not only in terms of the calendar, the month, but also how many hours after sunset that you may need to be there to catch the window of opportunity to detect a thermal pattern, and the concentration on catching things that are in a very, very short window of opportunity. A lot of thermographers miss concealed moisture. They either wait too late or they show up too early, and we feel like in our RoofScanIR classes we adequately address that to help, as you said, the owner advocate, regardless of what hat they're wearing.
exactly. You know, and a little bit later in this presentation, Rob will tell us about the training course. I don't know that we have the next one posted exactly where it is. We had one recently, and so we do these courses about about 3 times a year or so. And we try to split it between West Coast, center of the country, and East Coast. If you have people that are doing infrared and you feel like that they're getting some strange results at times and they can't explain it, it might be a good idea to send them to our classes. Here, this is an issue that's come up, which I don't want to talk too much about on this net meeting, but the air leakage between the boards of insulation. This is a data center. It has positive pressure in this part of the building. This is a wintertime survey. The warm, moist air is pushing up. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're walking, it's elevated, or you're flying over it. It's very, very hard to discern the difference between warm air coming up and a wet spot in the roof. On top of that, this is causing some amount of issues. I'll show you in the next slide. We did an experiment where we had close to zero pressure inside the building. We flew over it. We also had infrared cameras looking up a man on the roof, and we were doing the walls. We did the whole thing at once with about 6 thermographers and 2 guys in an airplane. And if you look at the left side, you see that you can see every board of insulation. But if you look at the right, you can see where all the air leaks come from only jacking up the pressure in the building about 1/10 of an inch of water, 25 Pascal. So that's hardly enough for a canary to feel. But as you can see, the board insulation is usually put down in a relatively warm time. And they're put together, even if they're put together tightly, if you have a single layer and you put it together tightly, in the wintertime when it really gets cold, it's going to separate because it shrinks a certain amount, and it's going to let this warm, moist air, and the moisture, as soon as it hits the bottom of that surface, is going to condense and go lay back down on the facer of the polyisocyanurate board or whatever insulation you got in next to the membrane. So this is going to be a huge issue in building science over the next few years. You guys in the roofing industry may want to get a handle on what this means to you. John, if you want to talk about Area Scan IR a little bit, it's one of our services, and I'll let you just kind of talk about it.
Yeah, sure. My name is John Gutierrez. I'm the Business Development Manager for RoofScanIR and Building Science Division. Area Scan IR is a archive imagery or a service that's for hire. Insurance companies, building owners, you can use this for triple net leases. You can use this for reconnaissance, or you're trying to obtain more work in an area. It is a good marketing tool to show building owners, roofing manufacturers, the condition of roof, facility managers. It has a very good value. You can always call us and we can show you how to present that to your client and how you can benefit from that. Also, what I would like to say is all our RoofScanIR contractors, they're all level 1 thermographers. What that means is they've gone through training. It's a week-long training. They understand how the technology works, what the equipment could do, the limitations of the equipment, and the limitations of themselves. With that being said, you're able to provide a good service. All the contractors have our report templates. All the products are the same. And we highly encourage that all the thermographers attend the class. We do webinars. At the end of the day, you don't want to be embarrassed hiring someone that is not experienced or competent. And like Ben said before, he went back to do a job after someone else did, and he found something that could be dramatic for your business, ruin your credibility as a roofer. If you're doing this yourself and this is not your forte and you're a really good roofer, you could blemish your reputation by doing a service that you're not familiar with. Understand the thermodynamics. I'm going to pass this forward on to Rob, which handles the contracting division and the training classes.
Yeah, everybody, this is Rob Miller, and basically I just wanted to jump in and put in my little piece about, we have, there's about 150 RoofScanIR members spread out across the U.S. and Canada, and basically this is a training method that allows you to take it to the next level. It gives you all of the information that you've heard about on this in a classroom format, as well as a field operations where we take you out onto a roof and we show you the rights and the wrongs. It covers all the safety. It covers all the practical, logistical information that it takes in order to perform a survey safely and efficiently. And then I'm the contracting director as well. So if you have a national contract, as far as the plant down the road from you has another facility in New Jersey or Nevada, we can get them the same type of inspection with the same formatting, the same training, the same camera resolution, so that you can compare apples to apples. If you've got a limited repair or maintenance budget for facilities, you can pull it from all of your locations and apply the dollars where they need to go. As far as the roofers, as far as roofers go, it makes sense in order to differentiate yourself from your competition. If you're the one who provides them with that client advocate, if you're the one that's looking out for their best interests, you're more than likely the one that's going to get the job. It doesn't come down to a bidding war. It comes down to we're doing the right thing for the right reasons, and we're looking out for your best interests. As Greg said earlier, I think the next training is East Coast. It's going to be in the first quarter of 2014. As soon as the details firm up a little bit, we're going to have that out on the website, and I'm going to throw it back to Greg.
All righty. Thank you very much to both of you. Now, how does this help your business? A little more specifics on that, Dan and I will discuss with you. So as it turns out, if you perform a routine maintenance service on your client's roofs, you are there, which is half the battle. You're there when the roof owner is ready to spend money on their roof. If you're not there, you probably only going to, you'd be lucky if you get a notice that they want to do it. But when they're ready to spend money and you've helped them to squeeze some life out of that roof, they're going to look to you to tell them at the moment when it's no longer worth trying to keep that roof and it's time to put another roof down, either by tearing the whole thing off or just doing a re-roofing. So the advice that we have is to build a relationship with the owner of the building or the building manager, so that you can be his hero, and then when it's time for him to spend some money, he's going to look at you and say, you know, these guys took me and helped me, and it's not, as Rob said, all about the bid. Another point is about commissioning the roof, if you will, Ben. How can you help the owner with the commissioning?
Commissioning could be done in a completed new roof installation or a recover roof installation, and it entails the infrared moisture scan to hopefully document on the new roof that there's no moisture intrusion. Obviously, if you detect thermal patterns indicating concealed moisture, everybody really benefits: owners, general contractors, roofing contractors, consultants, architects benefit because you discover that concealed moisture early and it can be addressed while the roofing contractor is mobilized.
So you mean to tell me that if I put somebody's roof down, you want me to take one of these fancy infrared cameras and find every little tiny wet spot?
That's correct. I'd like to know if we have concealed moisture. It's never beneficial in the building life and certainly the roofing system performance to bury a cancer like concealed moisture.
So actually having us, and the service Rob was talking about is called One Call. Have our One Call service anywhere in the United States. You only have to talk to one person, and you can get a roof commission. Commissioning roofs is the most inexpensive service that we offer because we don't expect to see but maybe one or two little problems. Believe it or not, owners do not get upset with the roofer when they see one or two little problems. It makes them actually, believe it or not, feel good about the job because they know that if we saw something, and because we're a third party, we saw something, we reported it, and it was one little spot or two, we're talking little tiny spots sometimes, or it's in great shape, that even if they see one or two little spots, that doesn't mean that the whole roof's wasted. To the contrary, that means that the whole roof is good except one little spot. I've found it hard for people to understand this, but I've seen more than one very happy owner just because he found one or two little problems. So number 3 here is, if you find the moisture in the roofing insulation prior to the recover, then it's going to put some teeth in your warranty, and you're not going to get caught later with a wet roof. So let's put a little scenario together, Ben. Let's say that somebody covers over a wet roof, and then there's been some pictures taken of those wet areas by either reconnaissance or somebody walking on the roof or whatever, and the moisture's still in the roof. New recover goes down, and then it gets pelted with hail, puts holes all in it, water goes in. So then another infrared's done. Now, who's going to be responsible? Is that the insurance company to pay, or is that the warranty to pay?
I think it would be the initial water that was trapped under the original roof prior to the recover roof would at least have some liability there. But the point that you're making is that any such scenario probably leads to litigation that can be avoided with a third-party infrared scan prior to recover roofing.
Exactly. All right, so know where and how much of the job is wet so you can adjust your bid and win the job. Well, let's say that you're doing a job and at least you get the notice to bid on a job. Maybe you haven't been their maintenance hero forever, and you want to know the condition of the roof. And as they said, hey, we want to remove and replace wet insulation. And your competitors go up on the roof and they walk around and they feel a bunch of soft stuff, and they don't know, they're guessing. They don't have infrared, they don't use moisture meters, and even if they do, they only get a little slight idea. So we come along, we either fly or walk or look underneath or get up on a higher surface and look down, and we document where the water is. And you can see how much you're going to have to replace based on real knowledge. That is sometimes the linchpin in getting you the job. All the other bidders come in and they say, oh, we need to tear the whole thing off. Or one guy says, there's nothing wrong with it. You just need a little membrane. You come in and you say, there's 14% wet, and we recommend cutting out, therefore, 19% of the wet insulation and then covering over the top but not removing the rest of the insulation. Here's our price. Now,
Greg, what was the national figure cited? Was it something like only 3% of the roof's areas generally had concealed moisture, and so you're throwing 97% of dry roofing assembly away?
Exactly. Now, not to say that if I'm in the roofing business that I don't want to tear it all down and own that roof and put it up beautiful job in. But a lot of times if you want to win the job, given what you said before about the economy as well, if I want to win the job, I know I'm going to put another a membrane down, and everybody knows what that is. So a lot of times, like I said, the linchpin in getting the job is knowing how much water's in there. We can help you with that. And that's, again, very simple work for us to do. And then the other thing is, wouldn't it be nice to know every wet roof in your area? It, again, could be if you're making cold calls and you tell everybody that you're the best roofer there is and you'd like to send one of your maintenance professionals over to take a look at the roof and assess it. Maybe 20 other roofing companies have done that in the past, but let's say that you could call them up and say, I'm looking at an infrared of your roof, and I can see that you have 12, 15% wet. I know where it is in the building, and I'd like to send one of my professionals over at no charge to you just to go meet and talk about what it looks like. That might get you in the door. So there's these are the ways that roof infrared actually will help your roofing business, where you probably in the past have thought, yeah, roof, infrared, moisture surveys, don't need it. Maybe in this economy you do need it, and maybe given the mindset of the owners at this moment, maybe you do need it. And that's what we're selling, which is the one-call service, as John and Rob both mentioned. It is a very good service that is done the same way from one end of the country to the other. So anyway, with that, I'd like to close this webinar, and I'd like to just do one more slide here that's saying why we think we're the best. We have low prices because we have a lot of volume. The work's backed up by our national company and delivered efficiently to you locally, and we do consistently high work. Consistency is the reason that McDonald's exists. Everybody knows that they have a hamburger. It may not be the hamburger of the world, but it is a very high quality, consistent product. And that's what we offer to you, the roofing contractor and the roofing community. For more information, please call us at 888-SCAN-FOR-IR. If you call extension 7, that's the one-call service. And you can always email us at admin@RoofScanIR.com. And with that, I'd like to thank Ben Hickson, Rob Miller, and John Gutierrez for being on this webinar. I hope everyone